It wasn't the man who changed. What changed was the courage to admit who he always was. Behind the moral masks, the lofty speeches, and the promises of virtue, human nature remains intact, hungry for power, recognition, and survival. For centuries, few have had the audacity to look into this abyss without averting their gaze. Machiavelli was one of them, not as a cynic, but as a lucid observer of an invisible order that governs human behavior far beyond written laws. Imagine a silent room, illuminated only by the weight of thought. It is there that Machiavelli still remains, not as a man of the past, but as an active conscience traversing eras, whispering truths that many prefer to call cruelty rather than reality. He did not write to comfort, he wrote to reveal. And that which is revealed is rarely beautiful in the eyes of those who depend on illusions to exist. The essence of his vision stems from a simple and disturbing point. Men do not act according to what they say they are, but according to what they are when no one is watching. Public morality is a fragile construct sustained by social surveillance and the fear of punishment. Remove these pillars, and what remains is naked impulse, desire, ambition, self-preservation. This is not gratuitous evil, but a primary, almost archetypal logic that runs through generations like an underground current. From this perspective, Machiavelli neither condemns nor absolves, he understands. And understanding at this level is an almost spiritual act. Theosophy teaches that the visible world is only the surface of deeper layers of consciousness and intention. Machiavelli seems to operate in the same hidden territory, where human behavior is not judged, but deciphered. He observes man as he is, not as he would like to be, and therein lies his strength and his historical incomprehension. Why does this perspective disturb us so much? Because it removes the comfort of a virtuous self-image. It exposes the gap between stated intention and actual action. It reveals that goodness is often not a noble choice, but a strategy conditioned by circumstances. When the cost of virtue becomes too high, how many truly uphold it? This question pierces time like a silent blade. Machiavelli understood something that few traditions have dared to state clearly. Social order is not maintained by goodness, but by the balance between fear, self-interest, and benefit. Where there are no consequences, ethics evaporate. Where there is no authority, chaos creeps in. This is not a pessimistic view, but a structural one. Just as physical laws govern the material world, psychological laws govern human behavior. Ignoring them does not negate them, it only makes the individual vulnerable to them. Under a deeper, almost esoteric lens, Machiavelli can be seen as a reluctant initiator, someone who points to the hidden mechanism of human coexistence and says, "Observe, don't be deceived, don't confuse the symbol with the essence." He understands that power is not born from brute force, but from the correct reading of human nature. Whoever understands the impulses controls the results. Whoever ignores them becomes a pawn on the chessboard. There is an inevitable tension here. If this nature is real, what does it say about us? Are we hostages to primitive impulses or conscious architects of our actions? Machiavelli doesn't answer directly. He merely shows that most prefer to be led rather than confronted with this responsibility. True freedom demands lucidity, and lucidity exacts too high a price for many. This is the truth that echoes in silence. Societies do not collapse for lack of ideals, but for an excess of naivete. Believing that man acts for the common good is comfortable, but dangerous. Machiavelli reminds us that lasting structures are not built on hope, but on understanding. And understanding requires abandoning carefully cultivated illusions. At the end of this first journey, a question remains. If Machiavelli was right about human nature, how many modern certainties rest on a collective denial? How many decisions are made believing in virtues that only exist in discourse? Machiavelli's presence doesn't impose answers. It instills the necessary discomfort so that the right questions finally emerge. and once awakened, they can no longer be silenced. Observe a common scene, almost invisible, because it's so frequent. A work environment, a family table, a group of friends. The words exchanged are polite, the gestures controlled, the smiles distributed with precision. Everything seems harmonious, but beneath this calm surface, silent forces move. Subtle comparisons, veiled disputes, temporary alliances. Machiavelli would see in this not a moral failing, but human nature itself at work. For him, the everyday has always been a field of power disguised as routine. He knew that man rarely acts transparently. Most don't say what they think, don't do what they feel, and don't reveal what they desire. They learn early on that social survival requires layers. The individual molds himself to the environment, adapts his discourse, adjusts his posture. Not out of conscious falsehood, but out of instinct. Machiavelli understood that hypocrisy is not an isolated moral flaw, but an evolutionary tool. Whoever shows himself completely exposes himself too much. Whoever exposes himself too much becomes predictable, and the predictable, sooner or later, is controlled. Consider the small betrayals accepted as normal, the broken promise, the truth omitted to avoid conflict, the support that disappears when the risk increases. None of this is surprising. On the contrary, it seems to be part of the game. Machiavelli only had the audacity to name the game. He realized that human loyalty is almost always conditioned by perceived advantage. When the cost outweighs the benefit, virtue dissolves with disconcerting speed. There's something uncomfortable about this realization because it touches a raw nerve. Everyone has trusted beyond reason. Everyone has believed they would be the exception. Machiavelli would say that this hope stems from a misreading of human nature, not from the malice of others. Expecting absolute constancy in a world governed by shifting interests is a refined form of blindness, not because people are inherently evil, but because they are inherently adaptable. This adaptability is the central point. Man changes his opinions, values, and even his identity according to the scenario. In public, he upholds high virtues. In private, he negotiates principles. Machiavelli observed rulers, merchants, soldiers, and ordinary citizens acting under the same logic. Power only expands the reach, it does not alter the mechanism. Those who occupy lower positions act in the same way, only with less impact. The nature is the same. It is the stage that changes. Under a deeper, almost initiatory lens, this understanding becomes an invitation to lucidity. Theosophy speaks of the veil of illusion, of the difficulty of seeing the real behind appearances. Machiavelli seems to operate on this same symbolic plane, showing that the greatest social illusion is believing that human behavior is guided predominantly by abstract principles. In practice, it is guided by fear, desire, and opportunity. When these three elements align, action happens. When they don't, discourse comes into play to justify inaction. There is a silent shift in this understanding. Many believe that knowing this truth makes someone cold or insensitive. But Machiavelli does not propose contempt for humanity. He proposes abandoning naivete. Understanding human nature does not eliminate empathy. It eliminates surprise. And surprise is almost always what hurts the most. Those who expect fewer illusions suffer fewer ruptures. In everyday life, this clarity manifests itself in an almost imperceptible way. It is the choice to observe more and trust less in words. It is the decision to analyze patterns, not promises. It is the recognition that intentions only have value when supported by repeated actions. Machiavelli does not ask us to distrust everyone, but to understand the inner workings of relationships. Those who understand the mechanism do not become cynical. They become prepared. And yet, it remains a disturbing mystery. If everyone participates in this game, why do so many pretend not to know it? Perhaps because admitting this reality requires abandoning comfortable narratives about justice, merit, and natural goodness. Machiavelli then emerges as an unsettling presence, almost a mirror reflecting what we prefer not to see. He doesn't force our gaze, he merely prevents complete self-deception. At the end of this stage, an ambiguous feeling settles in. Something has been revealed, but not fully explained. The routine now seems to carry hidden layers. Simple gestures take on new meanings, and the inevitable question begins to form, still without clear words. If this is human nature, how can one act without getting lost in it? The answer is not yet available. It requires a deeper descent, where power, awareness, and responsibility meet irreversibly. There comes a point where observation ceases to be external and becomes intimate. Machiavelli doesn't only speak of the other, the distant ruler, or the abstract crowd. He points indirectly to the reader. The true revelation occurs when one realizes that the same logic that governs empires also operates in small daily gestures. The desire for approval, the fear of rejection, the pursuit of silent advantage, all this happens even before any conscious moral reflection. Human nature acts first. Reason comes later to explain. At this deeper level, Machiavelli seems to anticipate an uncomfortable truth. Most decisions do not arise from elevated consciousness, but from unexamined impulses. Man believes he chooses freely, but reacts to invisible stimuli, ancient conditioning, symbolic rewards. Virtue, when it exists, is often a side effect of aligned interests, not a deliberate sacrifice. This realization does not diminish the human being, but reveals him as he is, embedded in forces that he rarely fully controls. From this perspective, power takes on a new form. It ceases to be merely dominion over others and becomes dominion over oneself. Machiavelli realized that few reach this stage. Most prefer to exert small external manipulations rather than confront internal chaos. Controlling others is easier than facing one's own motivations. How many actions considered noble would withstand an honest examination of their true intentions? How many right choices would remain standing if personal gain were removed? From this point on, the narrative shifts to even more subtle territory. Machiavelli seems to suggest that the greatest danger is not conscious wickedness, but collective unconsciousness. Men who believe themselves to be good become predictable. Predictable men become instruments. When someone believes they are always acting virtuously, they lower their guard. And where the guard falls, external control is installed with almost ritualistic ease. It is not cruelty that sustains lasting systems, but organized naivete. Here, his vision touches on something that resonates deeply with theosophical thought, the idea that the visible world is sustained by unrecognized internal forces. Real power doesn't shout, it doesn't impose itself openly. It observes, waits, and acts at the precise moment. Machiavelli doesn't teach domination through violence, but through understanding. He seems to say that whoever understands the structure of the human mind governs without needing to appear. Whoever doesn't understand, even with good intentions, will always be governed. Could it be that the greatest slavery is precisely that which goes unnoticed? There is a silent revelation at this point in the journey. The reader begins to notice that Machiavelli is not advocating absolute coldness, but lucidity. He does not ask that morality be eliminated, but that its real workings be understood. Morality, when disconnected from human nature, becomes fragile. When integrated with it, it gains solidity. Ignoring impulses does not purify them. It only pushes them underground, where they act unchecked. This perception completely alters the way we view relationships, institutions, and even our own identity. Individuals begin to question not only what they do, but why they do it. And this question rarely has a comfortable answer. Machiavelli then emerges not as an instructor of manipulation, but as an uncomfortable guide towards self-awareness. He dismantles the illusion that we are primarily driven by lofty ideals and forces us to confront the internal machinery that sustains our choices. To what extent are we willing to see this without retreating? At this stage, something begins to reverse. Fear ceases to be external and becomes internal. It is no longer the fear of the other, but the fear of self-knowledge, because knowing one's own nature implies responsibility. There is no longer any excuse for ignorance. There is no longer comfort in ready-made narratives. Clarity demands a high price. It requires coherence between what one sees and what one does. Few accept paying this price. Machiavelli seems to anticipate this resistance. He writes as one who knows he will be misinterpreted, but does not back down. His work bears the mark of someone who chose structural truth over social acceptance. And perhaps that is precisely why his presence transcends the centuries with such force. He offers no consolation, he offers clarity. He promises no redemption, he promises understanding. In a world that prefers well-crafted illusions, who is truly prepared to live without them? As this stage of the journey comes to a close, a disturbing feeling solidifies. The perspective is no longer the same. The justifications sound hollow. The simplistic narratives begin to crumble. And in the silence that follows, a new question arises, deeper and more inevitable. If understanding human nature is the first step, what comes next for those who can no longer pretend not to see? There are curious records that help to understand why Machiavelli sounds so relevant today. During his time as a diplomat, he interacted with leaders who publicly declared themselves pious and, in private, ordered betrayals with almost ritual serenity. A ruler could attend Mass in the morning and, in the afternoon, authorize the elimination of a political ally without any sign of internal conflict. To many, this would seem like extreme hypocrisy. For Machiavelli, it was simply consistency with human nature when power is at stake. He realized something that is rarely said aloud. The greater the responsibility, the less room there is for moral illusions. In critical moments, decisions are not made based on what is beautiful or just, but on what preserves the structure. A leader who hesitates in the name of abstract virtues puts the entire system at risk. This realization did not arise from theory, but from direct observation. Machiavelli saw cities prosper and collapse not because of excessive cruelty, but because of excessive naivete at the wrong time. There are also lesser-known episodes that reinforce this interpretation. In some Italian cities, extremely popular rulers were overthrown precisely because they believed that the people's love was enough to protect them. An economic crisis or an external threat was enough for that support to evaporate. The same crowd that applauded began to accuse. Machiavelli noted this pattern with almost scientific precision. Collective affection is volatile, but fear is consistent. Love depends on expectation. Fear depends on consequence. This understanding resonates in modern situations in an almost disconcerting way. Companies that build their image solely on likability tend to crumble at the first scandal. Leaders who rely exclusively on charisma lose authority when they need to impose unpopular decisions. Machiavelli had already anticipated this centuries ago. He understood that stability does not arise from constant approval, but from the predictability of reactions. When people know what to expect, they adjust their behavior. When they don't know, they test limits. There is a curious fact observed by contemporary scholars that directly relates to this view. In environments where rules are applied inconsistently, transgression increases, even when punishments are severe. Conversely, in systems where consequences are clear and stable, even if moderate, behavior tends towards control. Machiavelli intuited this without statistical evidence. He understood that human beings respond less to the intensity of the rule and more to its certainty. This perception leads to an important turning point in the narrative. For Machiavelli, power is not a constant display of force, but the management of the invisible. It is knowing when to act and especially when not to act. It is allowing small liberties to avoid major revolts. It is yielding in appearance to preserve the structure. Many have confused this logic with coldness or manipulation, but it is closer to psychological engineering than to explicit tyranny. At this point, his presence takes on almost an initiatory tone. He seems to be saying that whoever seeks to govern people without understanding their most basic impulses is doomed to failure. Idealized morality does not sustain systems. A deep understanding of the human mind does. This does not mean abandoning values, but recognizing that values only survive when they are compatible with reality. An ideal that ignores human nature becomes ruin, disguised as virtue. There is something improbable and unsettling about this conclusion. Many of history's most stable periods were led by leaders who were not admired, but respected. And many of the fastest collapses occurred under figures who were too charismatic, too confident in collective goodness. Machiavelli doesn't celebrate this dynamic. He describes it. His neutrality is what is most disturbing. He doesn't promise a better world, he promises a more accurate view of the world that exists. As this understanding deepens, the viewer begins to realize that Machiavelli is not only talking about politics, but about any human structure, families, organizations, social groups, even intimate relationships. Where there is expectation, there is power. Where there is emotional dependence, there is vulnerability. Where there is an absence of clear boundaries, there is instability. This logic repeats itself with almost mathematical regularity. And then comes the final unease of this stage. If all this is true, why do so many still resist accepting these silent laws? Perhaps because accepting them requires abandoning comforting fantasies about control, automatic justice, and guaranteed rewards. Machiavelli doesn't offer comfort. He offers a map, and maps rarely please those who prefer to believe that the path will always adjust to their desires. The journey, however, is far from over, because understanding how power works is only half the process. The other half involves deciding what to do with that knowledge without being consumed by it. There comes a decisive moment when knowledge ceases to be mere observation and becomes choice. Up to this point, Machiavelli has directed the gaze outward and inward, dismantling illusions, revealing patterns, exposing the silent mechanics of human behavior. Now the tension intensifies because it is no longer possible to feign neutrality. Whoever understands human nature begins to carry an unavoidable burden. Knowing how things work forever alters the way one acts. Machiavelli seemed aware of this breaking point. He knew that seeing the game changes the observer's position. Naivete cannot be recovered. The individual who understands how power is organized, how loyalties fluctuate, and how decisions are truly made never reacts the same way again. He observes pauses, calculates silences, interprets the smallest gesture. The world ceases to be a moral stage and becomes a field of forces in constant motion. This is where many back down, because this clarity brings profound discomfort. It dissolves the fantasy that good intentions are enough. It reveals that the absence of strategy is not a virtue, it is vulnerability. Machiavelli doesn't push anyone towards cruelty, but he makes it clear that passivity is often interpreted as weakness, and weakness in any human system tends to be exploited, even without the conscious intention of the exploiter. There is a silent twist in this understanding. The real danger lies not in overtly ambitious individuals, but in those who refuse to acknowledge their own ambition. They act without awareness of the impact they cause, and, therefore, become instruments of greater forces. Machiavelli perceived that the most efficient power rarely presents itself as power. It disguises itself as necessity, urgency, common sense. Those who do not perceive this believe they are choosing, when in reality they are reacting. At this point, the narrative gains depth. The viewer begins to realize that Machiavelli offers no shortcuts, but a difficult journey. There is no promise of easy victory, only the possibility of not being surprised. He teaches that anticipating movements is more important than reacting to them, that preserving one's position is often wiser than seeking immediate expansion, that retreating at the right moment can be more strategic than advancing driven by pride. This logic clashes directly with modern ideals of absolute transparency and constant exposure. Machiavelli would warn that those who reveal themselves completely also expose their weaknesses, not because the world is composed only of predators, but because information always generates asymmetry. Whoever knows more controls better. Whoever shows too much loses room for maneuver. This is not a moral rule, it is a structural rule of human relations. Tension grows when one realizes that this knowledge can be used in different ways. It can serve blind domination or lucid self-preservation. It can harden or mature. Machiavelli doesn't dictate intentions. He delivers tools, and tools are neither good nor bad in themselves. The risk lies with those who use them without awareness. Perhaps that's why his work still provokes discomfort. It demands intellectual and emotional responsibility. There is also an implicit loneliness in this path. Those who see too much tend to speak less. Those who understand the workings avoid empty speeches. Machiavelli seems to whisper that true power does not seek applause, but stability. And stability is rarely admired. It is silent, almost invisible. The individual who reaches this stage learns to endure the incomprehension of others without explaining themselves, because they know that excessive explanations weaken their position. As this section nears its end, a question becomes increasingly apparent. How far is it possible to go without losing one's own essence? If human nature is this mixture of impulses, interests, and masks, where does conscience fit in? Machiavelli does not ignore this tension. He seems to suggest that true mastery lies not in denying nature, but in consciously integrating it, not being dragged along by it, nor pretending it doesn't exist. The pace quickens as the denouement approaches. The viewer senses that something is about to close, but not yet completely. The understanding of power is almost complete, but the final element is missing: meaning. Knowing how the world works is one thing. Deciding how to exist within it is another. Machiavelli has led the reader to the edge of this decision, but he doesn't cross it across. This crossing is individual, silent, and irreversible, and it is precisely at this point of suspension that the narrative remains alive, because the greatest lesson was not delivered as an answer, but as a state of permanent alert. Those who have come this far can no longer feign innocence. All that remains is to face the final stage, understanding the true cost of lucidity and what it demands of those who choose not to close their eyes. Reaching this point means accepting that something has changed, not outside but inside. Machiavelli's presence throughout this journey was not that of a master imposing answers, but rather that of a consciousness that compels us to see clearly. Now, in the silence that forms after the revelation, the most important question of all arises: what to do with this understanding? Because knowing human nature without consciously applying it is merely accumulating intellectual weight. Transformation begins when knowledge finds action. The first step is simple, but it requires discipline. Observe before reacting. Machiavelli taught, directly or indirectly, that most mistakes stem from emotional haste. In practice, this means reducing impulsive responses, avoiding unnecessary explanations, and learning to read the environment before taking a position. Those who observe gain time. Those who gain time expand their options, and options are the true basis of personal power. The second step is to recognize patterns, not speeches. Words are cheap, intentions are invisible, but behaviors repeat themselves. Applying this principle to daily life changes everything: relationships, professional decisions, personal choices. When you start judging less by what is promised and more by what is consistently delivered, frustration decreases and clarity increases. This doesn't harden the heart, it strengthens perception. The third step involves self-control. Machiavelli never separated external power from internal mastery. On the contrary, he knew that whoever does not govern themselves will always be governed by circumstances, emotions, or more lucid people. In practice, this means taking care of your own reaction, how you present yourself, what you reveal, and what you preserve. Strategic silence is not omission, it is protection. Reserve is not weakness, it is applied intelligence. There is also a deeper, almost existential adjustment. Accepting human nature does not imply acting against values, but aligning values with reality. Idealism without structure generates frustration. Structure without awareness generates emptiness. Balance arises when you understand the world as it is, but choose to act with intention, not out of naivete or cynicism. This is the integration that Machiavelli suggests without ever explicitly stating it. Another essential point is to abandon the constant need for approval. Those who live to be validated relinquish power. Those who need to be understood all the time expose themselves too much. In practice, this means accepting that not everyone will understand your choices, your silences, or your limits. And that's okay. Maturity begins when inner coherence is worth more than external applause. Real transformation happens when this understanding becomes a habit. When you start talking less and listening more. When you stop reacting to predictable provocations. When you choose your battles carefully. When you understand that not every truth needs to be told, nor every victory needs to be displayed. This attitude doesn't isolate, it strengthens. It doesn't harden, it stabilizes. Machiavelli didn't teach how to dominate the world. He taught how not to be dominated by illusions. And that is perhaps the greatest gift his thought offers. Freedom is not born from the denial of reality, but from a profound understanding of it. Those who see clearly suffer fewer surprises, make fewer repeated mistakes, and build a silent strength that does not depend on external validation. If this content provoked discomfort, reflection, or even resistance, that's a sign that something was touched upon. And if you've made it to the end, it's because you're willing to see beyond the surface. Now, the choice is yours, to take this understanding into daily practice, or to leave it as just another interesting thought. If this video resonated with you, please like it now. This helps the channel continue producing profound content like this. Comment on what impacted you the most. If you prefer, do so anonymously, just to record your reflection. And if you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe. Here, the journey isn't about comfort, it's about clarity. And clarity transforms.